Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Mayor of the City of Clarence, Councillor Brendan Blomley.
Hello, welcome all. Before proceeding, I pay my respects to the Murumina people as the traditional and regional custodians of the lands on which we meet, and I acknowledge the continuing connection of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people to the skies, lands and waterways. I pay respect to elders past and present. Before we commence with tonight's council meeting, please let us all pause for a quiet moment of reflection and respect. Well, thank you, councillors. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Well, good evening and welcome to the Clarence City Council meeting of Monday the 8th of July 2024. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, and what is said in this meeting is not protected by privilege, and there is a link to the agenda papers on Council's website. Item number 2, apologies. Councillor Beth Warren and Councillor Bree Hunter both have leave of absence. Councillor Richard James and Councillor Jade Darko are apologies tonight, and apart from that, we have 2/3 of us here, which is good. Item number 3, declarations of interest of councillors or close associates. Are there any declarations from councillors? There being none, we now move on to our omnibus items. Item number 4, 4.1, confirmation of the minutes. The minutes of the council meeting held on the 17th of June 2024 and a special council meeting held on the 24th of June 2024 have been circulated. Are there any issues arising? There being none, we now move on to 4.2, Mayor's Communications. And my diary entries from the 18th of June through to the 8th of July today have been circulated. 4.2.2, Open Spaces Grant Program. I'm delighted to inform colleagues that our application into the Open Spaces Grant Program Round 2 for upgrades to the Clarence Mountain Bike Park Trail Hub, the creation of the disc golf course at 7 Mile Beach, and upgrades to Bayview Park and Playground and access upgrades at Bellreeve Beach has been successful to the tune of $150,000, and I table that correspondence. Thank you, CEO. 4.3, Council Workshops as listed in the agenda. 4.4, CEO, are there any petitions?
Thank you, Mayor. No, there are no new petitions tonight.
Thank you, CEO. On to 4.5, reports from outside bodies. First will be the Copping Refuse Disposal Site Joint Authority. Councillor Walker. Nothing there. I note that Councillor Warren's not here. Moving on to Tas Water Corporation. And with the recent election of former mayors Kerry Vincent and Beck Thomas to the Legislative Council, 2 vacancies arose on the Tas Water Board Selection Committee. Following a ballot of Southern councils, I'm delighted to report that I was elected by colleagues to this committee. We held our first meeting in Launceston on the 27th of June, and as most colleagues would be aware, Tas Water recently advertised for a board chair and a director, so we have our work cut out for us, particularly as filling the shoes of retiring chair Dr Stephen Gumley AO with the right fit will be critical to the ongoing success of this organisation. Prior to the Board Selection Committee, I attended the Tas Water General Meeting where we were provided with comprehensive reports from the CEO and the Chair and key management personnel. The Tas Water Corporate Plan for financial year 25 to 29 was also adopted, and as always, if any colleagues would like a copy of that plan, please contact either myself or Ms Ellis. Moving on to the Greater Hobart Committee, we're attempting to settle on a date with the new Chair, the Honourable Erica Betts, and I'll report back following that meeting, as I know that Minister Betts is also keen, very keen to have that meeting as soon as all our diaries can align. Moving now on to the study tour report, Councillor Hume has a report on Melbourne and Brisbane sports training administration facilities. Councillor Hume, in line with past practice, there's 5 minutes available to you to speak to your comprehensive and extremely professional report, if you'd so wish.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll probably use all of it. So when the proposal for the High Performance Centre in Clarence first came up, my initial impression was that high performance centres are just facilities that benefit clubs and their elite players. And from the research I've done, even prior to this tour, but including the tour, I've learnt that that's very far from the case. Centres like these are highly engaged with their communities and they respond to local needs. Now, it's one thing to read about this, but it's another thing entirely to see it for yourself, and that's why I undertook this tour. The tour covered the administration and training facilities for St Kilda, Western Bulldogs, Carlton, North Melbourne, the Brisbane Lions, and we also visited a couple of rugby centres, the home of the Brisbane Broncos and also Ballymore Stadium, which is the home of both the Queensland Reds and the Wallaroos. High performance centres have extensive community programs delivered in partnership with schools, TAFEs, other sports clubs, charities and various other not-for-profit organisations. Some of the issues that their community programs address include mental and physical health, suicide, racism, reconciliation, violence against women, respectful behaviours, equal opportunity, social inclusion, educational engagement and First Nations leadership. One particular, or what I thought was an exemplar of these community programs is the Huddle, which has helped improve educational outcomes for over 150,000 school students. Several centres partner with local TAFEs or RTOs to offer qualifications in areas like sports science or psychology. And many of the programs that are delivered in these centres rely on the facilities of the clubs, which means that the benefits are concentrated in the communities where the centres are located. This is not just about sports clubs using playing fields. Community groups also use facilities such as meeting and function spaces, media rooms. So, for example, there was a room in one of the clubs that's open to podcasts and student radio and functions like that. Hydrotherapy pools, gyms, physiotherapy suites, and that's just a few examples of the facilities that the community use. As I stated in the report, there are two major drivers of community engagement by clubs. One of them is the leverage of the landowner, and that's particularly the case when facilities are owned on Crown land or council land. And the other is the need for the club to engage in order to drive membership. As we know, Tasmania Devils is technically the largest, but that's based on the $10 foundation memberships. I'm sure when they start to charge a serious membership fee, they will need that engagement to drive their membership. So, as far as I'm concerned, the Tasmania Devils meets both these tests. So, Clarence City Council is uniquely placed to derive substantial community benefit from the High Performance Centre in Rosny. And this tour was a real eye-opener for me. In my mind, it strengthens the case for a High Performance Centre in Clarence, but also drives me to look at how we can maximise the community benefits of such a centre. Now, other councillors were invited to come on the tour. I thank Councillor Hunter for coming on the Melbourne leg of the tour, and also we were joined by two of council staff who are named in the report. And this is something I would strongly recommend to other councillors if they want to have a look at some football training and administration facilities or high performance centres and see for themselves what they offer. So thank you to those who came on the study tour with me, and also to all the club representatives from the various places we visited who gave up their time and imparted their knowledge and helped us facilitate the tour. Thank you,
Councillor Hume. Colleagues, are there any other reports from council and special committees and other representative bodies? Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to table the minutes from the Cultural Creative Advisory Committee meeting of the Thursday the 30th of May 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chong.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I table the May minutes for the Richmond Advisory Committee and the April minutes from Cycling South.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to table the minutes from the Active Living Advisory Committee for the meetings of 25th of July 2023, 7th of September 2023, 16th of October 23, 11th of December 2023 and 25th of March 2024.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Colleagues, moving on to 4.6 weekly briefing reports. The weekly briefing reports of the 17th and 24th of June and the 1st of July 2024 have been circulated to councillors. Are there any matters arising? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in respect to the weekly briefing report of 1st of July 2024, Driffy Peninsula Structure Plan update, my query, and I'm happy for this to be provided confidentially at a later time, relates to the tender process that has more recently been gone through in relation to securing a contract to develop the Driffy Point Structure Plan, and I'm just hoping whether Council will be able to provide greater detail around that tender process in a confidential way that adds some more context in relation to the tender and the detail of the specific tenders and how we've arrived at the decision that we've arrived at. Given that this one was managed by delegation and didn't come to Council, I thought it would be something useful for all of us to have at some point.
Thank you. Mr Marr.
Through you, Mayor. Happy to provide that.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, are there any other matters arising from the weekly briefing reports? Well, there being none, I note that we're now at the end of our Omnibus items. Can I please have a mover of the Omnibus items? Councillor Goyne, seconded Councillor Chong. All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you. That's carried. Now move on to item number 5, public question time. There's 5.1, public questions on notice. There are 2. First one from Ms Sharon von Berto regarding the AFL High Performance Centre. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. The first question from Ms von Berto reads as follows. If an AFL High Performance Centre is built on Clarence City Council land at Rosny, will the following outcome stated on page 12 of the Stadiums Tasmania Annual Report 2022-23 come to fruition? The statement in that report is the Tasmanian Government's agreement with the Australian Football League contemplates ownership and management of the proposed training and administration facility to support a Tasmanian team will rest with Stadiums Tasmania. The question is, if so, when will the transfer of ownership of the land currently owned by Clarence City Council to Stadiums Tasmania occur, and under what conditions? The answer to that question is there is no proposal to transfer land to Stadiums Tasmania or anyone else. Council intends to lease land for the High Performance Centre only.
And the second question from Mr Bradley Walker of Howrah, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr Walker's question is as follows. What investigations into using the site at Clarence Plains, namely 17 Goodwins Road, owned by the state-owned land, brackets, Director of Housing, and 45 Goodwins Road, owned by Clarence City Council, were undertaken to conclude that this site did not meet the specifications for the location of the AFL High Performance Centre, and what were the findings of these investigations? The response to that question is as follows. The recreation land at 17 Goodwins Road near Bayview College is not currently owned by Council. The site at Bayview also didn't meet the selection criteria around centrality and location that other sites provided, which is deemed to be an essential factor in the success and operations of a high performance centre. Additionally, integrating the high performance centre with the proposed community sporting precinct posed challenges upon assessment due to high levels of demand from both the school community and the elite users of the high performance centre, with analysis indicating this proposal not easily able to coexist. Council is working with the Department of Education, Children and Young People to develop Bayview as a sporting precinct for the school and wider community.
Thank you, CEO. Moving now on to 5.4, questions without notice. Are there any questions from the public gallery this evening? All right, thank you. There are 3. I'll start with Mr Victor Marsh, please.
My name's Victor Marsh. I live on the Bluff. On Wednesday, the 26th of June, I was holding a banner in Charles Hare Memorial Park when I filmed Mark Brown, founder of the Yes Team, Yes Stadium group, and a mate advancing towards me holding banners. I realised Mark Brown was going to make contact with me, so I raised my forearm and pushed him away, witnessed by my wife from the pedestrian overpass. On Friday, the 5th of July, we witnessed Mark Brown approach the back of our car near Rosny Barn. He took photos before walking into Rosny Park. The photos have appeared on Facebook showing my personalised number plate together with personal attacks. My question is, as Mark Brown has featured on the mayoral Facebook page, does the Mayor condone this bullying and intimidating behaviour?
Mr Marsh, you've made a number of assertions tonight. I'll remind you, privilege does not apply in this place. If you have genuine concerns, there are avenues in which to explore those concerns. It is not appropriate to come into an open forum like this. And Mrs Marsh, please do not, you know the rules in this place. You know the rules. Mrs Marsh, do not make those assertions in here. We have a motion on the agenda tonight, a motion from Councillor Kennedy that you would do well to look at in the recording. So I will not have people, Mr Brown, no, I will not have people come into this place and make wild assertions like that. It is inappropriate.
Wild. It's the truth.
Well, Mr Marsh, that makes... Mrs Marsh, you do not have the floor. You speak again out of turn and you will leave the chamber. I will not have unruly behaviour in the public gallery. There are passionate views on both sides of this debate. We can have a civil discourse. Mr Marsh, that's my answer. Please take your seat. Now, Mrs Marsh, if you're able to... Mrs Marsh, you don't have the call yet. If you're able to conduct yourself in a civil manner, I will call you, but if you misbehave, you'll be sent home. Simple as that. I will not have rudeness in the public gallery, from you or from anyone. You have the floor, Mrs Marsh, for your question.
Joanne Marsh, Bellreeve. At 32 minutes and 2 seconds into the council meeting on June the 17th, 2024, at public question time, the Mayor made a number of requests requiring me to take a seat before he would answer my question. I said, "Excuse me, I do have a disability and I am making my way to my seat." The Mayor said, "I am aware of that." On Wednesday the 26th of June, I became involved in a very confronting conversation with Mark Brown, Yes Team, Yes Stadium Group, at the Rosny pedestrian overpass, during which he said, "You'll be dead before anything gets done here." I note that posts on Facebook indicate a collaborative relationship between the Mayor and Mark Brown. My question is, has the Mayor told Mark Brown what my disability is?
Mrs Marsh, please take your seat. Mr Marsh, take your seat as well. I will not see public question time politicised in this way. It is highly inappropriate. Privilege does not apply in this place. If you have genuine concerns, there are avenues to, as I said before, to explore those concerns. It's not appropriate in a public forum to come in here and make those types of assertions. No, Mrs Marsh. Mrs Marsh, this is not a question and answer session here. You've asked your question, I've given you the answer, that's it. Now, if you'd like to leave now, you're welcome to do so. You're welcome to stay as well. But I will require you, please. No, Mr Marsh. Mr Marsh. Mr Marsh. Mr Marsh. All right, well, good night. Mr Marsh, do not talk to other people in the gallery like that. Mrs Marsh, don't. Good night. Good night, Mr Marsh. I would just remind everyone here, there's a certain level of behaviour that's required here, particularly in a public forum. We're being broadcast live on YouTube. Everyone ought to be treated with respect and in a civil way. It is not appropriate to come into this place and make those sorts of allegations. If everyone is genuinely concerned for their health and safety, then please go and talk to the authorities. Do not air your concerns in a public forum like this. Are there any other questions from the public gallery? Mr Chapman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I say something?
No, please to the microphone. Thank you. It's better for the camera that way.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Council. My question, I'm Bell Reid.
Thank you, Mr Brian Chapman.
Has the CEO or Mayor received preliminary information from the Department of State Growth or of the geotechnical, environmental and heritage assessments of the Charles Hand Memorial Park and Rosny Parklands? And if not, when does Council expect to be advised of the results, and when will these be made public?
Thank you, Mr Chapman. Please take your seat. I'll call on the CEO. No, it's fine.
Thank you for the question, Mr Chapman. Through you, Mayor. We have not received that information. That was commissioned by the Department of State Growth, and I'm not sure when they plan to advise us of any findings, nor am I aware of whether they will release that publicly. But I'm happy to ask those questions of the department and provide a response in the minutes.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Mr Chapman. Are there any other questions from the public gallery? There being none, moving now on to deputations by members of the public. Item number 6. Members of the public making a deputation are reminded that they are limited to 3 minutes, and the timer will sound at the end of that time. And in the interest of fairness, as I say every meeting, I'll seek to strictly enforce the time limit. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. Our first deputation tonight is from Mr Mark Brown in relation to the AFL High Performance Centre.
Good evening, Mr Brown.
Good evening. My name is Mark Brown. I live in Cambridge. Good evening, Mr Mayor and councillors. As many of you know, I am an ardent supporter of the Tasmanian AFL team and all that this encompasses. Most importantly, the stadium at Macquarie Point and the Training Administration Centre, better known as the High Performance Centre. We can all agree that this issue has been controversial, and whilst I certainly acknowledge the rights of others to hold a different point of view to mine, what has been deeply concerning has been the length some have gone to deliberately mislead and scare members of the public. Since Rosny Park was announced in December last year as the preferred site of the High Performance Centre, we've seen an escalation of misleading scare tactics. For example, we've been told that the future of the skate park is in jeopardy, and that because Rosny College students have not at all been individually consulted, then the High Performance Centre doesn't have the social licence to proceed. As we all know, the detailed design work hasn't been undertaken, and at any rate, the Mayor made it abundantly clear at the May 15th public meeting that in the unlikely scenario of the skate park was to be relocated, then this is something that the government would need to fully fund as part of the HBC development. As to Rosny College students be consulted, why? As we know, they all come and go every 2 years. Importantly, the principal of Rosny College has been consulted and is in strong support of the HPC being developed in Rosny Park, and he's a former Rosny College student. The Rosny Park Tennis Club is also strongly in favour. Since the state Labor opposition came out in support of the HBC being developed in Rosny Park, the anti-development group have accused Labor of making this political. Seriously, let's be honest. In numerous media interviews, the spokesman for the Save Rosny Park group has made a number of incorrect and, in my view, deliberately misleading statements. On the 19th of June, the leader of the Tasmanian Greens, Dr Rosie Woodruff, MP, in an adjournment speech under parliamentary privilege, likewise made a number of misleading assertions about the High Performance Centre. Wouldn't it be great if we could all keep to the facts? The Rosny Parklands, the disused former golf course and Charles Hand Park total 21.19 hectares. The proposed High Performance Centre will only require between 5 to 6 hectares. The claim that hundreds of mature trees will be destroyed also doesn't hold water, as many of the trees that will go are pine trees and, in my view, an introduced pest. The City of Clarence can have the best of both worlds, plenty of green open space and a world-class, community-focused AFLW high-performance centre. Clarence City Council electors are now bound to an elective poll that will cost ratepayers $200,000. That increased all our rates by 0.3%.
Thank you, Mr Brown.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. CEO, is there a second?
Thank you, Mayor. There's a second deputation tonight from Ms Denise Hoggan in relation to the High Performance Centre.
Except on Mrs.
Good evening, Mrs Hoggan.
Good evening.
Got to be careful these days.
Denise Hoggan, Rosny. Council staff, councillors and Mayor, thank you for the work you do. I'm here tonight because I've overviewed the AFL High Performance Centres, and I also want to consider the question, why must it be in the Rosny Parklands? I'm data-driven. I visited all of the HPCs on AFL websites and also on Google Map. I measured, I looked. They're big, bulky, often self-contained, and they may have seating for thousands of people. Point one. Oh, sorry. I'm aware that there's statements circulating in the community about HPCs. Point one, it'll be free for Clarence City Council. Essentially, this is wrong because council is expected to offer up prime land, even if it's leased. It's worth well in excess of $8 to $10 million. And paying it forward as we should, council may well end up contributing. These teams have an arms race. The most recent HPC developments all cost in excess of $80 million, and 4 of these had local government contributions. Point two, it said that the economic benefits are clear. The only economic analysis that we have is from SGS back in December and a council workshop with unattributed statements in the October meeting, and including, and I quote, future capital investment would also be expected to be a flow-on to the surrounding precincts. And I wonder, are Rosny Parklands economic bait to stimulate the projects in Kangaroo Bay and Rosny Hill? Being neither an economist nor a mind reader, I can't know. Point three, HPCs must be close to a club's home ground. Now, that's patently not the case. Most are not. Some, like the Lions that Councillor Hume visited, are 30 minutes drive away plus. Point four, 2 ovals are essential. 13 of the 18 clubs have 1 oval only. Point five, an HPC cannot be near an airport. Essendon's HPC is almost on the runway, as Councillor Hume could attest. Point six, there are great community facilities. What Councillor Hume said, absolutely. But at the behest of the funding...
Thank you, Mrs Hoggan. No, that's the same rules apply for you as everyone else. Thank you, Mrs Hoggan. Happy for that to be circulated if you'd like. If there's still information there, happy for that to be circulated to colleagues if you'd like.
I will
email them. Great, thank you. Thank you very much. I advise that Council now intends to act as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. Moving on to item 7.1, planning application, part of 162A Flagstaff Gully Road, Lindisfarne, with access to New Motor Road, 26-lot subdivision including balance lot, public open space and road lots. Councillor Moulder, are you keen to move this one? Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Chong, I think Councillor Chong beat you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Moulder, thank you.
Now, I welcome this particular report, and despite my misunderstanding of it at the Friday briefing session, my concern with it originally was that there are a number of lots that front onto the Flagstaff Gully Road, which is a council priority to form an interconnector between the Tasman and South Arm highways at Mornington and the East Derwent Highway at Geilston Bay as a major future connector, in fact a ring road, something that will bypass the Tasman Bridge for all that traffic that doesn't want to go through the centre of Hobart, which seems to be the model that we do, that this road is a vital and important part of the future management, not just of motor cars, but of transport and whatever means of transport the future may hold. Whether it's electric cars or other, this will require a transport corridor. Now, my concerns were allayed by the fact that the lots that I thought had access to to Flagstaff Gully Road, because that is totally inappropriate for that sort of highway road to have multiple private connections. We have learnt the lessons, I hope, of what we've done with Clarence Street, what we've done with the East Derwent Highway, what we've done with Cambridge Road, and all the problems that causes in Tollard Drive when there are other solutions available, which is minimal private connections. So given all that, and that my concerns were allayed, the only other thing I can say about it in general terms is the logical access for this subdivision would have been off Begonia Street and connected to the Lindisfarne Ridge. Unfortunately, despite numerous years, we have yet to bite the bullet and produce the Lindisfarne Ridge structure plan, and as a consequence, we now have developers coming to us with developments that are less than ideal but can't proceed in any other way until we get these structure plans sorted. And there are a number of structure plans that are kicking around at the moment, and all of them seem to be in some sort of a delay mechanism, and to the point where we're going to have to go, and contrary to good planning policy, I might suggest, we might have to actually get the landowners, developers to do that themselves, but we've learned from bitter experience that those things tend to be not. When a developer does his plan, they tend to be it in such a way as not to form cohesive links between communities, particularly where they border socio-economic communities that may be doing it a little harder than others. But as a consequence, we now have at last a development, and a development that does not impede the traffic flows, and I would welcome it. And it's a much needed area, much needed housing, and housing that will come on stream in a short period of time compared to the 30 or 40 odd years of some other major developments that we're all busy talking about. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. Councillor Chong.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Very little to add to Councillor Mulder, except to say it's a very thorough report and suggest that my colleagues support it.
Thank you, Councillor Chong. Deputy Mayor, would you like to?
No, I'm fine.
No, any other colleagues wish to make a contribution? Councillor Walker, thank you.
Thank you. And I note some of the comments made by the mover and his long-standing commitment to progressing the Flagstaff Gully Link Road. The matter of that, for those playing at home, came to this council in 2012, soon after he had vacated council, when this council in its wisdom decided to not even move a road reservation. In fact, I was the only councillor at the time to support that, but that was a missed opportunity. As far as some other matters go, the structure plan again is another missed opportunity, and last term this council decided in its wisdom, in the absence of a structure plan, that it would forward it to the higher authority when a more strategic overlook was occurring, which really to me just seemed nothing more than a, I don't want to say virtue signal, but wasn't much else in the absence of a structure plan. We lost the opportunity to do that. We had in that budget environment, we could have done that. Subsequent budgets, the next budget after that was the COVID budget, and from then on life got harder. Even though motions were moved, such as mine, to prioritise. And therein lies one of the problems with this development. It's occurring in a strategically important area without the strategic infrastructure in place for it. And that pains me, as does the fact that the link road isn't, which would have made such a development like this so much more viable, is somewhere closer than Never Never, but it's not really that much closer. So these things weigh on my shoulders as I look at this motion before us.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Right reply, Councillor Mulder.
Just a couple of questions. The road reservations to which Councillor Walker refers are actually at the other end. That was when we had an opportunity to put the road reservations on. They're at the Gilston end along Shag Creek, I believe. Now, this particular road reservation, and this was before Councillor Walker came onto the council, was actually created by an original subdivision. And at that stage it was decided that we would create the road reservation. The beaut thing about this particular reservation is that those lots across the front, which were part of that original development, are now being taken over as an even wider road reservation, which is an improvement upon the road reservations that were placed on this particular road way some 2 years. And the link road, I think, if we put it together, if you talk about a cost-benefit analysis, this link road, by a study conducted on behalf of this council, which is a matter of public record, returns $2.20 for every dollar invested. That is a staggering return for a few kilometres of roadway. Compare that to the Bridgewater Bridge, whose return on investment is a grand 52 cents, or 58 cents, I think, in every dollar. In other words, for every dollar we're spending on this mega project out there, we're only going to get 42 cents return. Compare that to a $2.20 multiplier, and I, for the life of me, can't see why that road wasn't built 15 years ago when people like myself on council actually started to push it, arrange for those cost-benefit analysis and those to go on. So let's get this clear. I've been a champion of this road and all the reservations that go with it. And while I'm at it, if it wasn't for intervention of people with a strategic perspective, that where the Southern Cross Homes now is, the original plan for that came right up, and there would be no capacity to put on the Gordons Hill Road ramps if it wasn't for members around this chamber, myself included, who identified that this particular development was going to create a problem if any future ramps. And the fact is that we around this table, not the developers, we around this table will manage to get that road reservation put in, which opens up the wonderful opportunity that the Gordons Hill Road ramps. So I know it wasn't meant that way, but there is a great champion of road reservations sitting around this table, and that's me. And I think we should seize every opportunity to go back to the 1960s when these road reservations were created, when these routes were created, and we have sat on our hands. We would have the Western Bypass in the city of Hobart.
There's a great deal of indulgence and by the chair. I can't conjure up a TARDIS, but I'll put the motion all the same, Councillor Mulder. That is that for approval, all those in favour. Anyone against? And Councillor Walker's abstaining. Thank you. Council now concludes its deliberations as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. Moving now on to item 8.1.1, a petition, drainage works in Evandale Street, South Farm. Is there a mover for the petition, please? Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Goyne. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Kennedy?
No, thank you, Mayor, as per the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Goyne, do you wish to speak to it? Does anyone wish to speak to this one? Councillor Mulder, please.
Just a question of, I noticed that there's a practice has crept in recent years where, not at this stage, but at the stage when the petition is first presented, that there is a speech given about the petition. And I think it's been a long-standing custom of this place, at least for most of the many years that I've been here, that the time to debate the content of a petition is when the officer's report comes back to us.
Councillor Mulder, I'll answer that. Thank you I'll take that as a question. It's actually the prerogative of the chair as to whether I entertain some remarks or not. It's not up for you or any other member sort of determine what happens there. That's the chair's prerogative. So there's your answer there.
I wasn't seeking, Mr Mayor, as I speak to this, I wasn't seeking to determine it. I was simply pointing out what the convention was, and that is the case. If you choose not to follow that convention, that's fine.
No, well, Councillor Mulder, please take your seat. And in answer to that, it's up to me as chair. And so I've allowed that to happen when members have sought the opportunity to do it. I take your point because, like you, I've been here for many years, but it's something that I'm allowed from time to time to occur. Thank you. Any other colleagues wishing to speak on this motion, 8.1.1? Councillor Kennedy, right to reply?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour to accept? Thank you. Moving now on to 8.1.2, petition requesting council conduct an elector poll, AFL-AFLW High Performance Centre. Is there a mover, please? Deputy Mayor, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Mulder. Deputy Mayor.
As per the officer's recommendation, please, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mulder.
Mr Mayor, can't do it justice. Mr Mayor, I'm reminded when I see this particular debate going on, and the electors' poll is an electors' poll, and it's not that we have a choice, we will do it. But I'm very much reminded on the debate which led to these questions. And that's and I'm reminded very much of Monty Python, where every tree is sacred, and Joni Mitchell's tar and cement contributions to our popular culture. I'd also like a note to say that some of the things I'm about to say are targeted towards particular and vocal individuals. Amongst those, I do not include Miss Rees, who I know quite well, and Ms Hogan, and Mr Chapman, who's with us this evening. These are people who are rational, reasonable. We agree to disagree, and they are fact-based, and they never do it. Now, 1,300 petitioners is commendable. 2,000, but you need to compare that to, that's the electronic petitions, but compare that to the 2,000 physical signatures collected in relation to the Kangaroo Bay Hotel, and they were physical signatures connected in the space of 7 days. That's commendable. I was at the Makers Market stall two or three Sundays ago, and I must say that the debate there was more a confrontation and more a hectoring than it was a debate. Some of the misinformation, which everyone is concerned about, that I heard was that people would be denied access. Well, we've heard today they are open parklands to which the community committed, and they are open and they are sporting facilities. And there'll be more access on the golf course, on the old golf course, than there was when it was a golf course, because you weren't allowed on it. The parks were to be bulldozed was an expression. In fact, anyone can tell you that they'll be re-landscaped, there'll probably be more trees. As we've heard tonight, the pines should go. They are non-pollinators, they are foreign, and they don't do much for the flora and fauna, for the flora in the place. So, is every tree sacred? Is every tree great? If wasted, does God really get irate? What I was challenged was at the market was would I change my mind? And I've always been a great believer. When the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do? What facts would change my mind? A geotechnical report that says it's unfeasible or undesirable? An environmental report that says it's too damaging? And yes, an electors poll, because the electors poll will represent a social licence. At the meeting that I had, they said 90%. They thought they would get 90%. They couldn't think of anyone, apart from me, of course, who would vote yes. So I compromised somewhat and I said I would do it if 70% of the electors were to vote no, then I would have to accept the fact that it had lost its social licence. So we have here, typical of the debate, extremes. Compromise is impossible. but they aren't binary things. There's the Mulder option, which would have saved Charles Hand Park, by placing the whole thing on the Rosny Golf Course. Now, although that's parklands now, it has not always been that way. So in the end, I think the solution for me, and what I will be doing, is saying no HPC on CHP, but an HPC on RGC. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Walker, thank you.
Well, Mayor, it is our melancholy duty to conduct an elector poll. I have no excitement about the fact that that's occurring. I think it's likely to deliver a paradoxical result to those that may be seeking it. So why does that happen? Well, I guess it's one of those things that when that's the only lever left to pull, people felt compelled to pull the lever. And I stand by motions passed, and I believe that if we had gone for that radical idea of actually getting 4 stakeholders around a table to discuss the future of Blunston Arena, just discuss it, I don't know that this poll would have been coming before us. But every council meeting's an opportunity to learn and grow in different ways, and boy howdy, re-landscaped, that's a euphemism I think we're going to see in international conflicts, in other things, but the re-landscaping, when we're talking about trying to put 2 ovals onto the parklands and the retaining walls involved with that, as I said, that's next level euphemism. It was John Maynard Keynes who did say when facts change, you change your mind, and there might be something in that, but then his idea in a crisis is also to pay 10 men to dig a hole and then pay another man to fill the hole, and that way the economy keeps going and the world gets saved. So, you know, I'm not a big fan of Keynes. You could have possibly twisted my arm a bit with Hayek, but we'll leave that for another night. Yeah, this poll is going to be conducted, but the whole process around this, I think, is just unfortunate. As I said, the High Performance Centre has so many positive attributes, as we heard elaborated earlier around the study tour, but the way that we've ended up in this situation is quite regrettable. So the process will go ahead, the costs are the costs, and we'll see what follows.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Hume, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. As colleagues have said before, yes, we are where we are because we have a piece of state legislation that requires us to hold an elected poll under certain circumstances. And as such, 1,000 residents or 1,000 electors can impose a cost of $200,000 on an entire municipality. I think there's an issue with the state legislation. The threshold is the lower of 5% or 1,000. So in smaller council areas, that would then defer to the 5%. I believe the threshold is too low. I mean, an elected poll is not binding on council. I don't believe that it's a useful or constructive avenue to resolve this issue. And I've said before that, unlike Councillor Mulder, I won't be changing my mind regardless of the outcome. And the reason is because I see this as an issue which has implications for not just the current electors of Clarence, it's something that has implications for future generations. And so I feel it's too important to simply subject it to popular opinion. Now, it may turn out that my view after the election poll is conducted isn't the popular one. I'm happy to wear that. I'm still happy that I believe I've done the right thing in the decisions I've made, because I know this is going to be an amazing opportunity for Clarence. I know that it cannot be built on another site. We've gone through the process of site investigation and selection. This is not our project. It's Department of State Growth and Tasmania Football Club. We can choose sites to put forward for expressions of interest, but we do not get to choose the ultimate site, and their criteria do have a say in that. The choice we have is whether to put it forward or not, and they've made it clear that Rosny is the only viable site. And I hope that fact gets made clear through the public debate and the electoral poll, because unfortunately there's a lot of misinformation out there. Now, this is a great opportunity for the city. It's something that has implications for future generations, and there will still, with the High Performance Centre going ahead in Rosny, assuming that it does go ahead in Rosny according to the decisions we've made, there will still be a huge amount of public open green space in that city, integrated with active recreation, passive recreation. Mind you, this was an area which had a large amount of active recreation, with the golf course dominating about 3/4 of Rosny's parks. We have a mixture of active and passive recreation for an area that I believe will be the envy of Tasmania, not just for the green open space and what we can develop there, but also for what the High Performance Centre offers in terms of social and economic benefits that will benefit our residents. And I will be certainly pushing for a yes vote on both questions in the electoral poll. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hume. Councillor Goyne, thank you.
I too stand firm in my decisions made in regards to the High Performance Centre. However, given that we are forced to do the electoral poll, I strongly believe in my thoughts. I am elected by the people to speak for the people, and I urge that the people speak. Because the worst result we could possibly get, whether it's yes or no, is to get a dismal amount of votes, so that we really, again, further don't really have an idea. So I urge everyone to vote. It is something that's going to be very important for the future of Clarence. And whilst I support the High Performance Centre, I do, as I said, represent the people. So please, everyone, just vote. Yes or no. You don't have to agree with me or the people around the table. Yes or no, and make an informed decision, I urge.
Thank you, Councillor Goyne. Anyone else wishing to make a contribution? Well, before I call on Deputy Mayor, I just want to clarify one thing, and that was with regards to Councillor Walker's contribution with the Blunston Arena option. It's important that everyone understand, both here and at home, that the only way that option had any possibility of success was if the TCA of Cricket Tasmania were willing to discuss it. That was investigated and they weren't, so it just wasn't a possibility at all. So, Deputy Mayor, you're right on the point, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And of course, what we're doing here this evening is a noting motion. We're not visiting the debates around the fact that this is not compulsory, the fact whether or not the threshold is appropriate. I'm sure we've all got views about that, given the thoughts no doubt many of us have gone through in our mind having to actually go through this process. I'm sure they're worthy discussions for the future. And of course the fact that it's non-binding. All of those things are dictated by the legislation. Whether those things need to be reviewed, maybe they do. In my humble opinion, I think there's probably a scope to have a relook at the way these things actually play out, how the triggers can be utilised, whether or not they should be compulsory. So all of those things I think are interesting issues to think of moving forward, but the reality is what we have before us is a simple noting motion, and the associated report simply steps out the process that we're to undertake, the timeframes around that, and the reporting that will happen back to us. I am intrigued, of course, in relation to the 70% threshold that Councillor Mulder has set himself. I'm not sure whether that's 70% of all eligible voters or whether that's 70% of those who actually turn out, because that may cause a slight issue at some point. So clarification from that might be good at some point. But look, I thank the officers for the work that's actually been done in organising all of this stuff in the background. Naturally, there's been a lot of hard work going to council getting organised for this, engaging with the Electoral Commission, and there'll be more work to come. So thank our staff, and of course the Electoral Commission has the vital role to play in getting all of this out there. So and finally, just to encourage the community to have their say, as other colleagues have done. It's an opportunity to get out there and have your voice heard, even though it's not binding, but I encourage everybody to do that as part of this process, and I commend the motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll put the motion now. That is that we note the elected poll petition. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. Moving now on to 8.2 asset management, 8.2.1, which is the draft Clarence Natural Area Study. I'll call for a mover, please, of this motion. Thank you, Councillor. I think that's Mulder. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Chong. Councillor Mulder, thank you.
Mr Mayor, this is going out for consultation and a commendable body of work that it is. I've had a look at it, as have a number of people and interested parties out in the community. And only one issue was raised with me, and it relates to the Lauderdale Basin area. And although this report doesn't quite go into such specifics, the map on page 19 of the North Barker report has a little area called Future Coastal Refuge Areas, Refugia Area. My question is that I suspect that's the name of a plant, or what is it? So that's something I might need to know. But fundamentally, whatever it is, or it might even be a typo, coastal refuge area it might be. But whatever it is, that a particular part of that, in fact a fair bit of it actually, is on private land. And I'm wondering what the process is for us imposing a natural asset value on a parcel of land that's in private area as a future reserve or future natural asset area, because of the implications that has on private land of what you can do with it. Because I can imagine the planning report coming back and it talks about the Natural Assets Code, and here we are imposing this thing without any, as far as I can see, what is the criteria for that? How has it been assessed? What is it that, what natural values are we trying to maintain in this particular area? So these are fundamental questions, I think, that probably need to be answered either now.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in. We'll stop the clock for Councillor Mulder, please, and Mr. Maher and Mr. Gray. Mr. Maher, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Councillor Mulder, the Future Coastal Refugia Area is an overlay within the planning scheme currently under the Natural Assets Code. It's been imposed or designed and imposed through state planning or the Tasmanian Planning Commission, and is part of the Tasmanian planning scheme, so it's a standard part of the planning scheme already.
So that area is part of the future. So what is the meaning then, I suppose, while I'm on my feet, of refugee?
In terms of the actual terminology of the
word.
word.
What does it mean that it's going to be a future?
The overlay does place controls upon what can go on in there. I'm happy to provide some more detail of that separately. But yes, it's an overlay that does place additional restrictions on development.
Thank you, Mr. Maher. Councillor Mulder, anything else?
The basis for those things still remains a mystery, but I look forward to the full explanation as to why we would select this area for a future refugee area, and not some other area, which will also have no doubt.
Councillor, I'm going to also interrupt here, and Mr. Graham, you've something else to add?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. That figure there is actually the Tasmanian Planning Scheme contains several overlays of the Natural Assets Code, so it's showing the entire municipality and what's actually in the Tasmanian Planning Scheme. When our natural area strategy is not imposing anything on private land, our strategy is about dealing with natural values on council land and how we may liaise with key stakeholders and private owners in terms of natural values on their land.
Thank you, Mr Graham.
I look forward at some later stage to actually telling them what refugia is. Why has that been selected, be it by the Planning Commission or anything else? So, but that's a question. It doesn't have to be answered tonight. And why this area is selected, not some other area, and what special values we're seeking to attain. But apart from that, it's a massive body of work, and it's to be congratulated. And the councillors who serve on the relevant committees and the staff who have put all this together. It's a comprehensive document. The consultants who are engaged have obviously done a reasonable job, and as we can see, that you know, they are I think it's important for the record that it's not, this plan will put no additional requirements over and above the planning scheme requirements of the refugia areas.
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. Councillor Chong.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, we are very blessed in Clarence with having a large number of natural areas within our municipal boundaries, many of which are enjoyed by people on a regular basis. And I think it's great to have this natural area strategy. I particularly like the strategic goals of connect, conserve and collaborate, because when you look at where the natural areas are, many of them are in private hands. And it's really good if we can come up with a strategy that enables us to work better with people. So I think it's really important this goes out for community consultation, and I look forward to it coming back afterwards.
Thank you, Councillor Chong. Councillor Hume.
Thank you, Mayor. This is one of the benefits of bringing your laptop to the meeting instead of relying on hard copy, is you can Google things. So to enlighten Councillor Mulder, well, you've got your phone, so there you go. Okay, so to enlighten all other colleagues and the gallery, refugia is the plural of refugium, which in biology is a location which supports an isolated or relict population of one or more widespread species. And relict, there's another obscure word, is a thing which has survived from an early period or in a primitive form.
Thank you, Councillor Hume.
Thank you, Councillor Hume.
Anyone else been furiously Googling? No. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I also, along with Councillor Chong, acknowledge that we do have some wonderful assets in our community that we're lucky enough to be discussing, and the body of work that's been put together here is a fantastic document to be going out to consultation. I don't think anybody would be opposed to going out to consultation on this. In supporting Councillor Mulder's contribution, I would say that there are perhaps some concerns, maybe founded, maybe some not, around what actually might apply, and this hopefully will be able to be illuminated further as part of the consultation process that happens. Some private landowners are a bit concerned about what layers are currently there, what overlays may end up coming as a result of any new strategy. There may be some capacity to actually go through that educative process as part of the consultation. It's natural for people to have concern that overlays are applied without justification, and then there's considerable cost and expense that has to be gone through to go through a process to have those overlays potentially disputed, which can happen. So I look forward to seeing what comes back through the consultation process, and I'm sure it will be a useful exercise for all of those stakeholders who've got questions and queries about some things that may be relevant, some things that may not. We'll see what comes out of that, and I'll look forward to seeing the report as it returns to Council in due course. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Any other colleagues wishing to speak to this? Councillor Walker, thank you.
Thank you. If we're thinking of refugia areas, there are some relics perhaps in this chamber that may also need to be looked at for preservation in future. Yeah. So it's fair to say that sometimes I'm lukewarm on some strategies, sometimes I'm outright contemptuous of some. This is pertaining to natural areas of which we are blessed, and we have a serious responsibility for stewardship over. This is a strategy that we need to get right. This is a strategy that is of standing. So, Mayor, I note the Deputy Mayor's comments around anybody refusing to go out to consultation, and I'd just make the fact that I foreshadow the following motion, that if this item on the agenda is not successful, I intend to move a motion that we delay approval of this till Council holds a workshop. Because a document of this strategy is worthy of about an hour of our time to go through before it goes out, to work through different points, to in some ways brief us more before it goes out, but to also get our input on where things should be. So on the basis that, you know, it hasn't been given the amount of time that it warrants, I am not going to be supporting it going out at this stage. We need to spend more time like we used to in workshops on things of this nature. Covered, sure, briefed, whatever, but you know, time's passed. Strategies like this got a serious amount of time.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any other colleagues wishing to speak to this? Councillor Mulder, your right of reply, please.
Mr Mayor, I do take note of Councillor Walker's concerns, but maybe the time for us to have this workshop, and I seriously suggest this is, and I suspect that's when it will occur, is after it comes back from community consultation. Because my contribution at the beginning, that questions that I asked, and thanks to the Latin scholars in our midst, it was resolved. And also I might say thanks to someone who I mentioned earlier on for actually sending me a link to a website that I don't have time to read just yet. But the time for that discussion is when the community come back, like when I came back with that question about what is it, where is it, and those sorts of things. Now, that would have been a nice thing to have asked before it went out, but it turns out it's a Planning Commission document and it already exists, so it's a bit pointless consulting about it. But those are the sorts of issues that we as a workshop, and I for one don't pretend that I know everything, that we should be able to get this and fine-tune it to the point of nth degree. This is what consultations is about. This is the best shot council's had, given the current constraints and the way this has worked through. And we now go out to the community and we look forward to more issues like the one I raised coming forward, so that we have an opportunity to seek the explanations before we adopted it and before we go forward. So I'd urge Councillor Walker to at least consider the fact that the stage for detailed discussion and stuff is after the community have had their say, not before. So, you know, good luck and thank you, and I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. Before I put the motion, I will just draw colleagues' attention to page 119, the first page, the executive summary of this matter, which under consultation reads, the draft strategy has been developed with input from internal and external stakeholders, council workshop and the Sustainability Advisory Committee. Following endorsement by council, the draft will be advertised for community consultation for a period of 4 weeks. Mr Graham, are you able to advise when the council workshop on this matter took place?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, the council workshop has occurred. I'm just actually trying to find online the actual specific date, but the consultants, North Barker, who helped develop the strategy, actually came in and discussed with council.
I remember it well.
The details of the strategy.
Thank you. Like you, the date doesn't on the top of my head though. But, there have been so many workshops. But all right, noting that Councillor Walker's foreshadowed an alternate, I'll put the recommendations moved by Councillor Mulder, seconded by Councillor Chong. All those in favour? Against? So carried. Thank you, colleagues. Moving now on to 8.2.2, the Clarence Bushfire Policy 2024 and Draft Clarence Bushfire Mitigation Strategy 2024 to 2034, community consultation. I'll call for a mover of the motion, please. Thank you, Councillor Mulder. Seconder, Councillor Goyne. Thank you, Councillor Mulder.
Mayor, we move on to yet another strategy, I'll endorse this one. I've asked some questions about it, as is appropriate, during its development. There are some things about bushfire management that have changed significantly since the planning scheme, the last planning scheme, and some approaches to it. It's important, and I think it's a statutory requirement, which I suppose makes it important in another way. But from a community development, the ravaging bushfires, the prospect of climate change, of ever-increasing temperatures, of hot, dry summers and cold, wet winters. In fact, all over the shop, we don't know what's going to come and happen. We have seen disastrous bushfires that have set world records around the world, not just here in Australia, around the world. And here we are with the forest full of eucalypt trees, which have to be one of the hardest bushfire things to ever do. Everyone else, gets rid of the ground cover, yet eucalypt trees, because of the oil inside them, they actually not only crown from tree to tree, they throw flaming balls of eucalyptus oil way ahead of the fire front, especially in winters. So any bushfire management strategy that thinks just by mowing the grass below the trees or by stopping the canopies from touching is going to prevent a bushfire. This isn't about prevention, this is about mitigation. This is about trying to get it so that they don't do it. That's why you have strategic burns. Once upon a time we used to say, we've got to burn all the understories. It's pointless. What we have to do, we have to do strategic burning. You have to do in particular places so that the fire will go, but it won't become a disaster because we have a low fuel area. And there's the other thing too about the aesthetics. Under the existing plan, we have things, and if you've ever driven down Clarence Street and wondered what that awful scar is up the back of Coventry Rise, it's a bushfire mitigation zone. It's a scorched earth policy. Of course no fire will ever go through there. There's nothing to burn. But that ought to be re-landscaped, and I'm pleased to say that those discussions have been had, and that under this bushfire mitigation strategy, some of these ugly scars will be revegetated. But revegetated in a way that can be managed so that the fuel load next to residential properties isn't so great. And might I say, that's the resilience that we can build into our communities, but it's also a very important thing. We, of all places in Hobart, know what the effect is of a catastrophic fire, which gets out of control on a hot, windy day. And we should never forget that. It was a fair while ago, and there's been a lot of work done, a lot of things, strategic burning off and things which so far have saved us the worst of it. But as things go on, we're going to have to get a lot more smarter and a lot more effective to doing these things. And I'm pleased to endorse this particular strategy going out to consultation. Once again, it can only be improved by other perspectives coming on board from other angles. And I look forward to eventually incorporating those sorts of community ideas into this particular thing. There's one thing we cannot do. We cannot leave and pretend that it doesn't exist, and we cannot say in the protection of our natural assets that we aren't going to conduct burning off or thinning out or fire breaks or any of those sorts of things. Yes, they do require some trees, but the result of not doing them is a far worse environmental catastrophe than the fact of doing them.
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. Councillor Goyne.
So I'm old enough to remember when climate change was called summer, autumn, winter and spring, but I would like to hope that we get that long, wet winter that Councillor Mulder's talking about. I'm strongly in support of this motion, however, obviously going out for consultation. Particularly, I love the part where it says, implementing small-scale cultural burning by developing partnerships with traditional custodians, because they have been managing this land far before we came here and managing it a lot better than I think we have a tendency to. As somebody who borders on one of the larger coastal reserves and having witnessed some pretty horrendous burn-offs in my 40 years there, I am looking forward to the implementing of the small-scale burning. And I also will look forward to, with the appointing of a bushfire planner, hopefully consulting with the community before those burns occur, because quite often we've been surprised by burns. So yeah, I think this is wonderful and I seek colleague support.
Thank you, Councillor Goyne. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Walker.
Thank you. So we're talking about consultation again, and I will hark back to the fact that yes, it's really vital to conduct that once consultation has occurred, but actually putting in the homework, the legwork beforehand does matter. And in relation to the previous item, a really important item, again, I didn't say we hadn't had a workshop. I said the gravity and the scale of it warranted the time that these sort of matters used to get at workshop, and I 100% stand behind that, and I don't believe we're doing things to the same degree of rigour and thoroughness as we did in terms past, and I don't recoil from those comments.
Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? Councillor Mulder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just 2 points. The first one is yes, I respect the practice of what is known as cultural burning by the original custodians of this land, but I think sometimes we get a little carried away with that. With what they were doing, they were burning out grasslands. They were not setting forest fires in the sticks. They were conducting grass fires, and that was appropriate too. And that is how they maintained the grasslands. And the grassland fires sometimes escaped into dry slough forest, but it would rarely escape into the wet forests. The cultural practice is right, but if we were simply to adopt that cultural practice, it'd be great for the savannahs in the Central Highlands. It would be great for the areas down the Coal River, all the traditional places where they travelled. But it needs to be much more than that. It needs to be across the thing, because it's the large forest fires that cause us the most damage. Although the grass fires, of course, can be damaging as well. So I do with that. And I concur with Councillor Walker on the conduct of the workshops, but they are what they are. And given the number of strategies that we're working on at the moment, if we were to conduct a full half-day workshop, which these things justify, I think we'd better we'd better give up our daytime jobs. And we'd better be having daily, full-day workshops on these matters. And even so, these matters are so complex, they're so depth, they're so broad. What on earth can we do except rely on the expertise of the staff and the consultants who put this stuff together? They consult with the relevant council committees, which we've all structured in such a way so that one or two of us councillors on these committees have a greater depth of knowledge than the rest of us. And if you come up to these sorts of things and you're saying at the short workshops that we have with them, what are the issues? Can we have some sort of a discussion? And I'm a great believer in perhaps having less structured workshops, which are more discussional. But once again, as the Mayor will rapidly remind me, that's his call, not mine. So that's the way it goes. What I would like, what is feasible and what is the best, well, we'll all have our own different views on that. But this is going through a process. If the councillors wish to now go into this report in great depth, they have got about 4 weeks to be asking the staff, asking the people, like I did just a while ago, about what this means, what that means. Is there another way? Is there not another way? As I did, I think, when this thing came to a workshop. But now it's time to go out to the community. And I'll say he's gone.
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. I'll put the motion.
Perfect is the enemy of good.
All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much, colleagues. Moving now on 8.3 financial management. There are no items, so I think Ms Murrells has a well-deserved break.
All the money. There's no money to talk about.
On to 8.4 governance. There are 8.4.1 Cats in Clarence community consultation. The mover, Councillor Goyne, I think, and then Councillor Kennedy is second. Thank you, Councillor Goyne.
Obviously, I'm very, very keen, and my heart was singing when we did the workshop the other day about this, and I was like, I finally achieved something in life. So I am absolutely grateful for all the hard work the staff has put in, and I can't wait for this to go out to community consultation. So I seek colleague support.
Councillor Kennedy.
Nothing more to add to that, thank you.
Thank you. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution to this item? Seriously? Deputy Mayor?
Very careful.
I want it to be very quick. It's not that late though. So yes, I just wanted to add, along with the mover and seconder, my appreciation for the work that's gone into preparing the consultation proposed here. I think many of us, even though the state government, with the legislation that they've proposed, is fairly hands-off in handballing this to councils to manage across the state. Nevertheless, that's where it is. So going out to community consultation around cats within the city, I think, is probably overdue, in my opinion. And I'm sure that the feedback that we get through this to inform us as to what future cat management looks like in Clarence and a whole range of other useful data will be extracted because of the quality of the document that's been put together and the lengths that have been gone to look at what we should be asking and the opportunities that we can provide the community to come back to us with what I'm sure will be very dear to the hearts of many. So I'm also likewise very pleased to see this come forward and support the motion.
Thank you. Any other colleagues? There being none, Councillor Goyne, right of reply. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on now to 8.4.2, delegations under the Land Use Planning Approvals Act 1993 and other planning legislation. Call for Councillor Chong. Thank you. A second, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Chong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, I think delegations are very important to ensure that the business of council runs in a consistent and timely fashion, particularly in planning where we have a whole series of dates that we need to comply with in terms of getting things to council or being approved. This is a very sensible suggestion. It provides a whole new list of delegations appropriate to the new legislation and changes in titles and all of those kind of exciting things and revokes the previous ones. And I seek my colleagues' support in approving them.
Thank you, Councillor Chong. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, also pleased to be supporting the motion before us. Like Councillor Chong, I recognise that delegations are very important instruments and the way that they're managed is particularly important, and I understand, of course, Council more broadly is reviewing delegations generally. This will probably be the first lot that will come to us. And understandably, there's a lot of catch-up going on in relation to this for the planning department to look at the planning policies that have come in, the LPS. A lot of it is just procedural catch-up and, of course, streamlining consistencies in terms of wording and greater clarity around the delegations and how they flow amongst the officers themselves. So that's really important delegation work to have taken place, and I look forward to seeing the benefits and the efficiencies and the streamlinings that hopefully come from these and the greater clarity that's being provided by the documentation. And I thank council officers and our head of planning for taking the time to answer a myriad of questions that I put forward at short notice. It was greatly appreciated, and I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other colleagues wishing to make a contribution? There being none, Councillor Chong, right of reply. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving now on to item 9, motions on notice, and there's one at 9.1.1, saying in the name of Councillor Kennedy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Goyne, thank you. Sorry. Councillor Goyne, you happy? Oh, Councillor Hume, seconded. Thank you very much. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the seconder. First of all, I hope the intent of the motion before you is pretty clear. And I really wish a motion like this wasn't necessary, but I feel like it is. Now, let's be clear from the start that this motion has nothing to do with the passionate or robust debates that can take place in here around the horseshoe. This is about the escalation of unacceptable behaviour towards staff in particular, but also elected members. Those that attended Friday's agenda briefing, even the most resilient, had to be moved by the heartfelt comments from a few staff members that just gave a small insight into some of the abuse that they have been subjected to while they are just trying to do their job. Just have a think about it. Almost every day receiving abuse, bullying, harassment, even threatening letters while you go about your work duties. How has it actually come to this? Abuse from the public in your place of work. How is this acceptable? And of course, this extends to elected members as well, as was evident at our last meeting, where 4 of us actually got to our feet and spoke about some of the unpleasant mail we've been receiving. And we're supposed to accept it and say, I'm tough, I'm okay. But it's not about being tough or resilient. It's about saying enough is enough. Sometimes it just has to be said. And yes, there has been an escalation of abusive mail to elected members in recent months, not to all, but to some. But whatever issue is before elected members and staff, remember, we're all simply trying to do our job. We can agree to disagree, that's absolutely fine. But there's no excuse for abusive behaviour. We have a duty of care to our staff and to each other. Now, how often do we talk about the importance of mental health issues in here? But do we actually really mean it? The statistics of people struggling with mental health issues right now, people of all ages, is frightening. You never know what's going on in someone's life at any given time. So just be careful how hard you push people when you choose to go down that bullying path. Social media has given keyboard warriors a wonderful platform for bullying, and as much as I try to avoid it, there's times when it is a necessity. However, I love photography and I have a moderately active Instagram page that I opened almost a decade ago, and I looked at it today and the last line of my bio says that I'm committed to creating a kinder world, and I am. And that's what I'm trying to do in just a small way tonight. Now, there are members of our city that we all enjoy wonderful interactions with. I meet with members of our city on a regular basis and enjoy great conversations and exchanges. We want our community to have their say. We encourage communication. But at the very least, let's try and restore some common decency and respect. There is no excuse for bad behaviour. Enough is enough. This is our workplace. It must be a safe workplace for staff and councillors. We need to let the public know this, and that, I repeat, there is no place or excuse for bad behaviour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Hume.
Thank you, Mayor. I thank Councillor Kennedy for bringing this motion forward and wholeheartedly support it. It's a very important issue. We have a responsibility as a council to make sure that not only ourselves as councillors, but our staff have a safe workplace. This is an important campaign, and I believe, when you consider the potential, not just financial costs, but also the human costs of poor mental health, and everybody responds to these, kinds of situations differently, but it can have an impact. What people say and the way they say it can have an impact. And when you consider the financial and human costs of that impact, I believe $5,000 to $10,000 is a very small price to pay to invest in some awareness raising of, what that impact may be. It's worth remembering that unlike some other workplaces, if you look at councillors particularly, our workplace is actually the entire community. that we live in, that we shop in. And that's true of some of the staff as well, at least the ones who live in Clarence. So, you know, and there's social media as well, which means you can't necessarily switch off at the end of the day and be free from abuse. So I think that there are people out there who are engaging in behaviour and in language that's unacceptable, that I think, you know, may actually have the opportunity to self-reflect when confronted by messages like that suggested by this campaign. However, I would like to say that, because I know that there's been a lot of heat in some, you know, issues that have come before council, and the High Performance Centre seems to have really ignited a lot of passion on both sides. I would like to thank those members of the public who have, and there are, you know, I'd say the overwhelming majority, have stuck to a debate around facts without, you know, playing the ball and not the man, not engaging in name calling, but have actually conducted themselves respectfully. But there are a few others who haven't, and you know, that's what we need to address and the impacts of it. And it's certainly, you know, staff certainly shouldn't have to wear the opprobrium for the decisions that ultimately councillors in this chamber make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hume. Councillor Chong, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As a council, we often consider and make decisions which we know will not be popular with everybody in the municipality. That's inevitable, whether it's a development application that we approve or reject and it affects people, or something on a much bigger scale than that. And we all expect to get passionate discussions from people about those. Of course we do. What we don't expect is some of the stuff that we've had quite recently and on previous occasions, which is not passionate discussions, it's abuse. But almost more than that, I think, and picking up on Councillor Kennedy's comment about the briefing on Friday, it is absolutely inappropriate that the staff get abused for decisions that we make in this chamber and they are obliged to give action to. That is completely inappropriate, and I do not understand why people in the community feel it's appropriate to bully, harass and abuse our staff who are doing their jobs. So I hope that this community awareness campaign has some impact. I hope people think about what they're doing when they pick up that phone or pick up that keyboard and send some abusive messages. I hope it makes people think before they do that, because it isn't fair and it isn't right and it shouldn't be happening.
Thank you, Councillor Chong. Councillor Goyne, please.
I actually rang the front desk today, and it starts with a recorded message where it says, you know, this person could be your neighbour. And I was like, one of the funny things that struck me when I first started working here, was elected here, so I don't work here. When I first started coming to council, I was shocked by the amount of people that I knew that worked here. And I turned around and I was like, oh, I didn't know you worked for the council. Oh yeah, we don't tell anyone. So I go, oh, okay. And I had a similar, I had a partner about 10 years ago who worked for Telstra, and he would never tell people that he worked for Telstra because you'd be guaranteed to get like an hour-long debate. So I understand, and particularly, you know, I'd like to thank Councillor Kennedy for bringing this forward, because it is absolutely crucial, you know, that our staff particularly are protected. I have a relatively thick skin. Yesterday I got called a tool and I said, well, thank you, because tools are at least useful. And I'd like to think I'm useful occasionally. So, you know, and that is my choice to, you know, dip my toe in the social media, and occasionally, you know, I'm a bit bored and, you know, we're going to have a great jolly old afternoon. But our staff should never be subjected to that, and particularly, you know, I know the incidences that Councillor Kennedy had mentioned of being confronted in public. You know, I've been out with my son and had people come up into my space and be like, and I'm aware that I'm a member, you know, of council, and therefore I'm a public figure, but, you know, there's a time and a place. Or people, I had one gentleman harassing me on Christmas Day. you know, and it's like I'm all well and good, I can take some feedback and you can name call me and whatever, but, you know, come on, a little bit of polite civil society really doesn't go astray. So I really would like to thank Councillor Kennedy for bringing this forward, and particularly hope that, you know, it does what she hopes, and to raise the awareness and continue to raise how important our mental health really is. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goyne. Councillor Mulder, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the exception. It's not a culture, it's not a community, but it's an exception. So is murder, by the way. And sometimes the way these people continue, and they continue to harass to some of the vulnerable peoples, that's what it ends up as. We call it suicide, but these people are being driven to something. And if you drive someone to death, that's called murder in my book. And that's the seriousness of it, and I commend Councillor Kennedy for bringing it in. Now, these are good programs and they are operating, and we need to do more of them and better of them. And as Councillor Kennedy's motion points out, we need to do this in a cooperative way, and everyone in the community is trying to struggle with it. And we need to keep going, and we need to keep working at it. At the same time, we would be remiss, and I know we do this, and the session we had on Friday, when the staff came out, they actually explored some of the ways in which they're managing it, and that's called resilience. Because no matter how good our campaign is, it's still going to happen, so we still need that seatbelt on people to help them cope with it. And if it does happen to them, we need to throw the weight behind them to tell them that these are individuals, they are not a broad community consultant. And the nature of these things, people seem to think that volume adds weight to their argument. In my case, it does the opposite. I turn off, and if they're not listening, then I'm listening. Tonight we saw, and I've previously mentioned them, some exemplars of how to debate. These are people who actually hold a different view on a particular topic, a topic which has actually produced some of this vitriol. And I take great pains to point out that is, tonight we saw how it ought to be done, and I hopefully, and I notice that it's been done, that this is being circulated through this. And there's been a rapid drop-off since the last council meeting, at least in my book. But both sides of this debate are involved. It's easy to point out and talk about some radical anti-development people, but both sides of the debate. And I'll share with you. This is Mr. Peter Merrill, and I'll name him. And I haven't got, but I'm quoting him, unless someone's hijacked him as admin of the Yes Team, Yes Stadium 2. In a post he said, this group is discussing the Stadium 2, blah, 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 etc. Any kind, courteous post or comment, even if it's negative or critical about this proposal or any other proposal, is welcome. Posts and commenters are negative or critical of any other participants here aren't allowed. Well done, Mr. Merrill. Great stuff. The next line, the politicians and bureaucrats are fair game. Now you've hit the nail on the head. Why are we fair game when you've so accurately said how human beings should behave? And this is someone who's probably on my side of this debate, but I'll call it out, as we should do at every chance that we get. That is patently wrong. And I expect on this Facebook site for an abject apology to all politicians and all bureaucrats and all staff that are involved in this sort of thing, because they're very quick to point out how raucous or how lunatic the other side is, and then they post things like that. No, we are not fair game.
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. Deputy Mayor.
Mr Mayor, and I thank Councillor Kennedy for bringing this forward and share her sentiments that it's not the sort of thing that you would ideally like to be bringing forward, but I hope this motion will go some way in enlivening discussions around reframing engagement, because helping people to be educated with the appropriate tools to engage is actually important, because disagreeing with someone shouldn't descend into personal warfare, but instead can provide an opportunity to actually deeper understand where people are coming from. And we should be supporting everyone to have a voice and be heard as part of healthy communication practices rather than focusing on the fight and proving who's right or who's wrong in any given situation. Environments in which any person feels intimidated, stays silent or changes position unwillingly in order to avoid conflict or abuse or enduring an uncomfortable situation instead of expressing issues openly are simply not acceptable situations. But it's important also to recognise that this motion is not about ignoring other mechanisms that assist people to deal with life's challenges. And I appreciate that tools such as resilience building are recognised as important tools to rebound from challenges and find ways to enjoy life and better handle stress and so on and so forth. But we need to be careful here that mantras like Friedrich Nietzsche's quote that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, not adopting that sort of stuff here, because the survival of the fittest approach actually abandons those people who can't manage to be strong and perhaps who shouldn't have to do that. So these tools are not without their constraints because, for example, resilience building can actually result in what's called toxic positivity, which is where you mandate that you act like nothing's wrong. Feelings that you have to focus on the positive and block negative emotions can result in what's effectively just thinly disguised denial or avoidance, where pain and negativity go unprocessed. So it's argued that on its own, being expected to be more resilient or stronger is not actually being supported, and that paradoxically, forcing yourself to be resilient doesn't always equate to that trait being achieved. So failing to call out and educate about unacceptable behaviours can actually venture into those waters, in my view, and that's why it's really important that we understand what this motion's about and that it's not diluted, because I see this motion as actually being more heavily focused on cultural change and education, and I believe that in addition to any regulation or legislation that affecting change relies on leadership and being able to build a strong culture to support it. And interestingly, even in the business community, and I noticed some reports from the Boston Consulting Group where they were trying to affect change post-COVID around technology, and they found in their surveys that culture, companies that focused on culture were 5 times more likely to achieve breakthrough results in their transformation initiatives than those that didn't. And I think that's what this motion is about, which is trying to change the way that some people view elected members and staff and the expectations that they have around their behaviours that are directed towards us. And there are many stakeholders that have a part to play in actually improving this. I'd like to quote from a lady known as Xander Shea Brown, who's an award-winning writer and director based in New Orleans. And she says, and I quote, "I dream of never being called resilient again in my life. I'm exhausted by strength. I want support. I want softness. I want ease. I want to be amongst kin, not patted on the back for how well I take a hit or for how many." So, in conclusion, I concur that the vast majority of people that we engage with are acting respectfully and appropriately and are a pleasure to deal with. And I never lose sight of the fact that it's our capacity as elected members to work with the community. It's part of our role. We all enjoy it, I'm sure, and it's why we're here to be elected representatives, to take on board those issues. But for the minority that elect to engage in unacceptable behaviours, the bottom line is that differences in opinion, no matter how deeply held, are not an excuse for unacceptable behaviours. And this motion is not about being soft or playing the victim or being unaccountable or any of those sorts of things. It's simply about seeking to educate about expected standards and workplace supports. I support the motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I condemn the abuse that staff have been subject to in contemporary times and times previous, and it is sort of something that can be a bit of a wave as different issues come before council. I condemn the abuse that elected members around the table have endured over this term and terms previous. And I'll call out the fact that there is a there is a differentiation, a gender differentiation in how it happens. In my time in council, and go back over 10 years, there's some belief that it's fair game, and I've seen the vitriol and the attacks tend to be more harder on female members of council than male. That's disgraceful. It's behaviour that people in almost any other aspect of workplaces and society wouldn't do. So there is no excuse for abuse. And the thing, I guess, about some of the things that people are subjected to is that it can be cumulative, but can also creep up slowly until it creeps up fast. I have some concerns about the motion. I absolutely 150% endorse the outcomes that Councillor Kennedy is seeking to pursue. But I express caution because done wrong or done with the best of intent, these often can backfire and have paradoxical results. So I guess the term awareness campaign gives the CEO a fair degree of flexibility in how to approach it. But you know, if it comes down to printing some posters on a wall and some Facebook sponsored ads, yeah, you're going to probably make things worse. You're going to have to really think about how this can be done and look at best practice examples probably from around the world. And watch out, because there is any number of grifters in the consulting world that will be knocking on the door tomorrow to say, hey, I've got a great thing in my back pocket to help you out. So noting the intent of the motion, noting what I believe to be a fairly wide spectrum in how it can be interpreted by the CEO, I'm happy to back the motion before us.
Thank you, Councillor Walker, and thank you all colleagues. Before I call on Councillor Kennedy for a right of reply, I'll now enter the debate as a councillor and not as your mayor. From the outset, it would come as no surprise to anyone that I wholeheartedly support this excellent and timely motion by Councillor Kennedy, and I thank her for all her work in this important space on this important issue. The behaviour of a small minority of the community needs to stop, and it needs to stop immediately. Some of the recent comments made directly or indirectly about councillors and council staff have been horrifying and abusive. These have ranged from personal attacks, telling staff they are no good at their job, they should be ashamed of themselves, and even sharing the personal details of staff members, which is known as doxing. The nastiness I have seen online over the past 6 months has really taken my breath away, not just towards me, but others in this room and beyond. So let me be clear. In no way, shape or form does anyone have the right to mistreat another person in this way. Sadly, the issue of online bullying and abuse is far-reaching in our society and due largely, as we all know, to the rise of social media. But just because this is a widespread issue, it does not mean the council should turn a blind eye to it. In fact, it is incumbent upon us as leaders in our community to take a stand against this damaging and potentially dangerous behaviour. Now, on the whole, our community are wonderful to work with. This unacceptable behaviour comes from only a very small segment. We want everyone to know this behaviour is not okay, and it needs to stop now. The intent behind the vicious words have come from cowardly keyboard warriors who would not have the courage to speak this way to our faces. Now, I have a thick skin and I've been in politics for a long time, so I'm somewhat accustomed to having negative and untrue things said about me. But not everyone has the same disposition as I do, and what I can tolerate without being affected may not be the same for others. And certainly our staff at council, who are not elected members, and all the obligations that comes with that. But public figures or not, no one should have to put up with abuse, and everyone everyone does have a breaking point. Councillors and staff, we are all human. And interestingly, listening to the debate tonight, over 70% of our staff live here in the city of Clarence. So what I think these trolls and keyboard warriors are too callous to consider is that you just don't know what's going on in someone else's life. They might be experiencing a private battle with mental health, or have unwell parents or unwell kids at home. A hateful comment written with little thought or care in an online forum such as Facebook could potentially have a lasting negative impact on a person's well-being. There also seems to be a lack of understanding regarding who receives the messages that people send to council. So if you send an abusive email to the council email, that's delivered to our customer contact team. If you make a nasty comment on or send a message through Facebook, that is directed to our comms and marketing team. A lot of angst towards the decisions made by us as council are unfairly borne by our staff. So let me be clear. We welcome healthy, productive debate. We encourage passion and conviction. But that can and that should be at all times without abuse or attacking individuals. It is my sincere hope that after tonight, the few in our community behaving in this way online will consider their choice of words more carefully and think about the damaging impacts of their actions. Councillor Kennedy, right of reply, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all from the bottom of my heart for your contributions here tonight. Some wonderful contributions. One point I'll pick up on there from the Mayor, just because you can take it doesn't mean you should, doesn't mean any of us should. Another point I pick up from the Deputy Mayor, this is in no way, and a very good point made, this is not about us being victims or being soft. This is us being strong and coming out and saying we are not going to let our staff put up with this anymore, and we are not going to put up with this anymore. And as picking up on Councillor Walker's concerns, and I take those on board, but I'd rather work with our staff and make sure we get the messaging right, work together on this and sit back and do nothing for fear of getting something wrong. We'll get this right. We'll get this messaging out there. And I feel really, really passionate about no longer sitting back and doing nothing. This is so important. Thank you for your support. And yes, I shall sit down now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Well done. Thank you, colleagues. Moving now on to item 10, Councillors' questions time. There are no questions on notice. Item 10.3, questions or answers rather to questions about notice previous council meeting as listed in the agenda. 10.4, questions without notice. Are there any questions from the floor, starting this evening with Councillor Kennedy?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chong.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Noting the last question about the Tasman Highway and writing to the state government about the state of the Tasman Highway, not that we got a great response, but can I please request that we send a similar letter about Grasstree Hill Road, which I went up today, and there are mattresses and things dumped on the side of the road as you drive up Grasstree Hill Road, which I know is not ours. But
yeah. Thank you, Councillor Chong. Councillor Coyne. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Just in a follow-up to a question posed in questions without notice from the gallery earlier, in relation to the geotechnical information, can I assume that that either yourself, Mayor, or the CEO have had no sort of communication, conversations, any nature that have, if you like, provided insight into the geotechnical situation in Rosny Parklands and Charles Hand Park since the since the testing has been occurring.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'll ask the CEO to answer that one, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. We have checked in with the Department of State Growth on a number of occasions to understand how things are progressing, but we haven't been provided with any details, and I understand that that was on the basis that the department hadn't had any information provided back to them for review. They may have had some verbal updates along the way, but certainly there's nothing that was able to be shared with us.
Right, yes, so literally nothing, no scraps, morsels, anything?
Not at this stage, no.
Thank you for that. Second question, just a clarification from the early, some of the earlier debates tonight. I know from, as I said, listening to programs like Tasmania Grandstand with ABC's Chris Rowbottom, that Cricket Tasmania has made it plain that they have been looking at alternative options to be located other than Blunston Arena. Is that Council's understanding as well?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. CEO.
Thank you. I understand that the Tasmanian Cricket Association has been doing some work around a future high performance centre for cricket, but at this stage I have no particular details as to where that might be, how it's progressed, what the time frame is. Again, it's a piece of work that we know that they are doing, but beyond that I don't have anything else.
Councillor Hume, any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Just on tonight, I'm going back to earlier debate on the subdivision, and we sort of went through the potted history of the Flagstaff Gully Link Road.
Yeah, relevance was a bit of a...
Should council wish to progress that project, what is the next step?
Good question. So, yeah. Mr. Maher or Mr. Graham? Mr. Graham.
I'll take that one on notice, and I can advise on the previous work Council undertook, and we understood state government undertook some work, so I'll provide some background information to Council.
Thank you.
Bill knows the motion coming on.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. With the federal election around the corner, who knows? Councillor Mulder.
Picking up the theme of pots, pot shots and potholes, potholes is where I'm taking this. I've had some communication from a resident in Glebe Hill who has reported a pass road pothole of some size. I saw the same pothole posted on social media. Previously, I've raised these questions and as way of Alderman's request, and I've been assured that there is a highly regular pothole repair strategy for Pass Road. My question is that I believe this pothole had been in the road in this condition and reported on social media for at least 5 or 6 days, and today I was advised that it still hasn't been repaired. Could I have some idea of the frequency and how, surely there's a daily patrol, and if you find one, you do something about it, or some frequency, is because I think it's unacceptable given Pass Road, given the nature of the potholes that go there, because it's a poorly constructed road, and it'll be some time before we solve it, as to the frequency of these potholes, and so that we can get these things done as soon as possible after they occur, which is usually triggered by a rain event.
Mr. Graham.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take that one on notice and update Council on the procedures we're undertaking with the potholes on Pass Road.
Could we look at it in the weekly briefing report this week, please? Councillor Mulder, second question?
No, Mr.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just further to the Derwent Estuary Program 2023-24 Recreational Water Quality Report. Has there been any update in relation to the work being done by council officers and DEP to better understand the downgrading of the Kangaroo Bay rivulet water quality from good to fair?
Thank you for the question. CEO.
Thank you. I will take that one on notice as well. Thanks. Thank you. Deputy Mayor? Great. All right. Well, thank you, colleagues. Moving now on to item 11, a closed meeting. Call for a motion moving to closed meeting. Thank you. Move Councillor Hume, seconded Councillor Goyne. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. That's passed. So thank you to those members of the public who attended in person this evening and have stuck it out all the way through, and those joining us at home via the live stream. Please, we welcome you back in 3 weeks' time, same place, same time. Enjoy your week. Thank you for joining us. Good night. Please end the live stream. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, Brian. Are we clear?